Episode 60 of the Interpretation Station is Call to Order. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to I've got an episode for you today for my Russian-speaking followers. Hope you're all doing well. Dobry dien to all of you. Beautiful summer's day here, beautiful spring day here in Geneva. Absolutely pouring with rain, grey skies. Brilliant. Just brilliant. So what better thing to do? You can't go out, you can't do anything. You may as well watch the Interpretation Station and learn a few tricks of the conference interpreting trade, or something like that. Okay, we've got a text for you today that I put up in the group a few weeks ago. I think it was actually on Easter Sunday, if I recall rightly. It was a text by Russia. It was the Advisory Committee of the Human Rights Council. Discussion of the level of representation of women in the human rights bodies and mechanisms, 16th of February. And so I will now share my screen with you, so you can see some of the notes that I took and some of the vocabulary choices I made, and just to take you through that. And at the end, if you don't want to listen to that, if you fast forward right to the end, I'm going to give you a full readout, like a full site translation of the text to sort of slightly replicate, let's say, interpreting conditions. So if you want that's towards the end of the show. But anyway, for those of you who will stick with me, let's take you through what I did. So okay, here we go. First thing I put here was just to remind you, the Консультативный комитет is the advisory committee. So they were meeting all through February this year. They're just a sort of subsidiary body of the Human Rights Council. Okay, представленность женщин. So, okay, this is talking about, this is the title of the agenda item. So, just representation of women. You don't have to do anything weird, like say representativity. Just representation of women. And then I give you this package here, the 1, 2, 3, 4. So, the human rights bodies and mechanisms. So I think I often tell you that, maybe for organach, I say, you can say organs, and generally that's fine. But I've just been thinking about it. I think maybe when it comes to Geneva, when it comes to human rights issues, all those committees, they're called the treaty bodies, in Russian, dogovorные органы. So I think maybe in this context, it's better to say bodies rather than organs. But, certainly things like the Security Council, the General Assembly, they are organs as well. So, but here it's just better to go with bodies. Okay, now this is a very dry text, by the way. It's very bureaucratic, administrative. One thing I'll say about it is it's not the sort of text you're likely to get in a test, I would say. It's almost too dry and organizational. But the words, a lot of the vocabulary you get in it, these words may be dropped in, depending on the context, into other much more political issues. You think you're on a sort of political, much more general issue, and some of these words, though, may get dropped in just because of whatever the sort of background context is. So it's good to be familiar with some of the words that we're going to be running into in this text. Okay, and here's one right from the off. So, принаймні на работу. So I said here recruitment, and a bit later on you're going to come to another word, прием на работу. So it's important to have solutions, slightly differing solutions for each of these phrases, for each of these ideas. So наем на работу is generally to recruit. Here, it's recruitment. And this is a theme which is крайне актуально, So often I say relevant maybe with актуально, but here's a sort of an alternative, very topical. Okay, so here I've said Российская Федерация. You don't need to say the federation if you're interpreting. He's going fast. You can just say Russia. They're not going to stop you for doing that. Традиционно выступает за. So this is a sort of new approach I'm taking to this phrase выступает за. So in the past, I'd always keep выступает as a verb. I'd say, it traditionally supports. But I've actually found that if you just say it as is a supporter of, it gives you more leeway, because then it doesn't matter if what you're supporting, if the next word is a verb or if it's a noun, is a traditional supporter of financing development. Okay, you can put that in, or if it's a noun, is a traditional supporter of sustainable development. Now, if you just say Russia supports, so for example, if you have a sentence that in English would, or rather in Russian, would be something along the lines of Россия выступает за то, чтобы Совет дал этому органу новый мандат. Now, if you start that sentence with Russia supports, you sort of run into a bit of a problem. You have to say something like, Russia supports the council giving that body a new mandate. Sounds a bit clunky. I think it sounds smoother in English if you say Russia is a supporter of giving that body a new mandate. I just think that if you just turn the выступает into a noun, is a supporter, and you as the block, you just give it, Russia is a traditional support, is a supporter of, and then you just wait for the rest of it. The rest of it, regardless what part of speech comes next, should slip in with a lot less difficulty than if you just stop at Russia supports. If you just stop at Russia supports, you've really got to start twisting things around a bit syntactically. Russia is a supporter of gives you much more freedom of maneuver in that respect. Just gives you more flexibility. Okay, равенство между мужчинами и женщинами. Okay, you don't need to say equality between men and women. You can just say gender equality. That's what that means. Don't make it, again, keep it simple. Just say gender equality. Во всех сферах жизни. So this was an idea that came to me that perhaps might not come to you in the moment when you're working, but we talk about this, in all walks of life. What is a supporter of guaranteeing gender equality in all walks of life? You can say in all spheres of life, but in English it sounds more natural, I think, saying in all walks of life. Итогом нашей последовательной политики. So my go-to solution for итогом, it tends to be outcome, okay, as opposed to, result sometimes. I think outcome is the safest solution to go for. And последовательной политики, again, my go-to for последовательной anything tends to be consistent. I tend not to play around with it too much. Again, for на данном направлении, again, if you're new to the profession, you may think you have to say in this sphere, but you don't really do it. It's just here. So the outcome of our consistent policy here has been. So again, just remember, you don't always have to render every word. Руководящих постов, so I give you two alternatives here. Senior posts, managerial posts, either or, I think, but it's good to just have a couple of solutions for that idea. Okay, вместе с тем. So sometimes I hear a lot of people saying at the same time. I don't like that as a solution for вместе с тем. I think it's stronger than just at the same time. So I would go with however. Okay, now here, прием на работу. So in contrast to при наеме на работу, here we've got при приеме на работу. And here I would say hiring. That's a word that is used a lot. Now, you know what? If I told you, I might have told you for наеме на работу, I think hiring would probably be fine as well. And maybe you can see приеме на работу, recruitment. I think it's just important to have two different solutions for these two ideas. If someone is listening to you, the Russian speaker he's using two different words because he does have two different concepts in mind. And I can tell you this, in New York, there is a Russian delegate. I'm not going to say his name. I'm not going to say what committee he works with. Just to say that he works very much in these administrative meetings, and he is an absolute stickler for all these kinds of words. And he listens like a hawk to you. And if he doesn't like what you say, he will correct you, and he'll be angry. So I think it's important with this sort of thing just to make sure you've got slightly two different concepts. So recruitment and hiring. One other idea that came to me for приеме на работу was induction, maybe. Okay, like, you do an induction week when you start a new job. Okay, nie только факт принадлежность к женскому полу. This seems a very verbose way of just saying, again, you should take into account not just their gender. I mean, not just their membership of the female sex, or you don't want to say the S word, of their membership of the female gender. I think it just sounds more normal just to say not just their gender. I think you might spark a bit of laughter if you start going to the length of saying the membership of the female gender. So yeah. Keep it simple. No jeszcze i znanie. So I've given you an idea here that might not necessarily come to you right off the bat. So skill set, I think that's a word they use a lot in human resources. When they're trying to hire new people, when companies trying to hire new staff, that they're trying to look for the people with the right skill sets. Претендентов, so these are the candidates, the people who are after the job. Для достижения данной цели. To that end, you don't have to again say, if you're to achieve this goal. Again, you don't always have to follow the syntax of the original, and I think to that end, it reflects the idea just fine. Всячески побуждать девочек и женщин к получению знаний. So they want to basically побуждать, they want to encourage girls and women. Получению знаний, I think it's to acquire knowledge as opposed to receive knowledge. I think in English we would sooner say you want to acquire knowledge. Again, it's just to remind you sometimes you need to get away from the original, the syntax in the original, because the concepts sometimes they're not reflected in the same way from one language to the next. И личному росту. So I think here, personal, рост is usually growth, but I think, again, in English, we'd more like to talk about personal development, aren't we? And then настоящего гендерного баланса. So, again, настоящий is a word they use quite a lot. I mean, I think, your first reaction may be real, but I think, you want to strike a genuine gender balance. And, by the way, for обеспечение настоящего гендерного баланса, the best, I guess, thing would be to just strike a gender balance. But again, you can say to guarantee, to ensure a genuine gender balance as well. Always remember, it's always good to just have in mind what the natural English collocations are. Okay, so here's another trick here, отбор кандидатов. Okay, so that tends to be selection of candidates. These two words, отбор и назначение, you need to make sure that, these are different concepts, okay? So again, my friend, two different words, so selection of candidates and their appointment to positions in, структурах и механизмах ООН. You're better off saying, usually my go-to for структурах when it talks about the UN is agencies, to the UN agencies and mechanisms. My friend in New York, by the way, I'm just thinking for должность, you have in the UN organogram, you see you have positions and posts. I'm not certain that I think post might actually be a position and должность a post. I think you're all right with either, unless you have the grave misfortune to run into my friend. I think you'll be fine with either. It's должность, positions, fine. Okay, в первую очередь должны учитываться. So I think this just basically means the priority should be. So that word, I say this a lot in my episodes. The priority is a word that will get you out of a lot of trouble. There are lots of rather clumsy, wordy ways the Russians have of talking what the priority is, sort of euphemisms. Again, it's important not to just be fixated on what they're saying and just to think to yourself for a moment, okay, all he's really talking about is the priority. Первостепенность, something or other, it's just the priority. Then we have форсирование меры по продвижению. Okay, forcing through I've given you here, or pushing through measures, we might say in English. В рамках организации. So again, just within the organization. I've given you also here at the this is an important thing I've written here at the bottom of this page. For all words underlined, there is very little room for synonyms, and I would recommend you just use the solutions as offered. Human resource jargon doesn't lend itself to showboating. Wise words indeed. I wonder who wrote them. Okay, that's just my opinion. I think you just with this if you run into this kind of text, you really don't want to worry about showing off too much. You just want to get the job done. Get those words. Be very specific with the solutions that you use for the different words, and just get it out of the way. Now, now here's a favorite Russian word, if ever there was one that they really like to drop in a lot. Чревато. Something is чревато последствиями. Oh my God, they use that all the time. The safest bet whenever I hear чревато is just to go with fraught. I've recently started using one collocation they'll use is, for example, чревато опасными последствиями. And I think you can actually get away there with saying it's asking for trouble, asking for big trouble. It's playing with fire if you want. But if you're not sure, if it doesn't come to mind, just remember the sort of like for like solution here for чревати, which is fraught. So here it's fraught. So pushing through, the promotion of women to various positions in the organization is fraught with creating preconditions for violation of Article 101 of the UN Charter. As I said, this text, it's so bureaucratic. It's fraught with creating preconditions for, I mean, as I say, it's hard to really make the text, this sort of text sound any more elegant than it is. Very hard. Okay, касающийся критериев кадровой работы. So whenever they talk about кадры, кадровой, then your best bet is just they talk about staff work, okay? Tezis. This is another favorite Russian word that comes a lot. I think, again, here the safest thing to go with is the word argument. I think in some cases you can say the hypothesis, but I think it's safer, quicker, just to say for tezis argument. Что недопредставленность женщин. So here you want underrepresentation. You had representation before, if you remember, представленность. So this is недопредставленность, underrepresentation. Okay, now these last four lines. Okay, so look what I've written here. A frequent Russian criticism of UN reports in general. Words like conjecture, hearsay, and speculation should be at the ready. So what he's saying, let's see what he's saying. We would ask in future, we want to ask the UN, when making such categorical заявления, claims, опираться на официальные межправительственные документы. So they want, when making these claims, when these experts make the claims, that they should base their arguments on official documentations and not on академические измышления, okay, и публикации неправительственных организаций. So, for измышления, I've given you here conjecture, but you've got these other good synonyms: hearsay, speculation. This is a big, and then the criticism again. They base their arguments on material published by NGOs. So they're very much sticklers that any claims that any experts, rapporteurs, whatever make, they should be based on intergovernmental documents, so on documents that have been adopted by the UN, and not on other ideas out with the purview of the UN or that come from the non-governmental sector. So that's an important idea to remember, just generally for the Russians. Okay, I mean, half of the battle with the Russians is knowing where they're coming from, knowing what their sort of big peeves are, and on what grounds. And so I would say that this is this is all part of the story. This is all part of their worldview almost. view towards the UN, that they're sticklers for everything being done by the book and not really giving much margin for thinking too much outside the box, I would say. Okay, so that's given you a bit of an explanation of the choices I made. So what I'll do now to finish off is to give you a quick sight translation of that text. I might change a few words, try and jazz things up a little bit if I can. I'll probably skip a few things here and there. Might even make a couple of mistakes as I'm doing it, gives it that little bit a bit of authenticity, and you can see what I'm going to do. I'm going to pretend, the conditions here. I think this was done via VTC. Either that was a recorded statement. So again, the emphasis was on trimming it, just getting the important meaning over without showboating too much. Okay, so here we go. President, we studied with interest the study by the Advisory Committee on Representation of Women in the Human Rights Bodies and Mechanisms. The issue of non-discrimination of women, including during recruitment, is very topical. Russia is a traditional supporter of ensuring gender equality in all walks of life, economic, political, social, cultural. The outcome of our consistent policy in this sphere has been a significant number of decision-making posts held by women. However, we believe what's very important for women themselves, indeed, is that during hiring, one should take into account not just their gender, but also their skill sets, their capabilities, and the professionalism of candidates. To that end, we need not only to ensure equitable access to education without discrimination, but to fully encourage girls and women to acquire knowledge and personal development. We see this approach as being the key to guaranteeing genuine gender balance in any sphere of work, including within the UN bodies and mechanisms. In the context of the study, we point out that during selection of candidates and appointments to positions in UN structures and mechanisms, we should prioritize the level of competence and professionalism of candidates, pushing through measures to promote women to various positions in the organization is fraught with creating conditions for contraventions of Article 101 of the Charter, including on criteria for the work of staff. We are astonished by the argument of the authors of the study that underrepresentation of women erodes the legitimacy of UN bodies. We would remind the experts that the legitimacy of UN bodies is enshrined in General Assembly resolutions, and we would request that in future, when resorting to such categorical claims, they should rely on official intergovernmental documents rather than academic hearsay and publications by NGOs. I thank you. So there you have it. There was a couple of, I think I weed a couple of times more than I would have liked. I used we when I could have used something a bit more neutral. Anyway, I think I tried to give you a couple of other things. Formirowanie zaявlenia, I think I said resorting to claims. Making claims would have been perfectly good, but sometimes you resort to claims. That's a good collocation to have sometimes. And podrywać legitimność, that came to me to erode the legitimacy of UN bodies. Okay, there you have it. Hope that's been useful for you guys. If it has, give me a like, subscribe, tell your friends and family, wherever you are, all about the Interpretation Station, no matter what field, no matter what walk of life they are in. I'm sure that the Interpretation Station can be a valuable new addition to their set of YouTube subscriptions. Oh yes. Okay, guys. Have a good. I hope you have a good week at work, and I'll see you again soon. Episode 60 of the Interpretation Station is adjourned.
The train is now leaving the Interpretation Station. We hope you